Hey everybody, my name is McKenley Kerner. The title of my speech today is Processed Foods, Cheap but Costly. Basically what I'm going to be talking about or trying to point out is the effects that processed foods can have on people, but how companies are, making the money off of it. So without further ado, I'll start off. So processed foods are more beneficial to farmers and businesses because of government subsidies, overall cost, and extended shelf life. However, processed foods are becoming a monster to America. With people constantly on the go with their busy American dreams, farmers and companies have found a way to capitalize. Picture this. You're a single mom, you work a 9 to 5, you have 2 kids that you have to pick up from daycare after work, you have errands to run, take them to soccer practice, take them to ballet, and you have a house to clean after work. Now, you're thinking, what should I do for dinner, Well, maybe a frozen pizza, maybe the one that's been sitting in your fridge for a few months, or your freezer for a few months. So, have you ever thought about what's in that frozen pizza, how it's gotten to your table, why it's able to stay good for so many months at a time in your freezer? So, in What the Health, it's a documentary on Netflix. I feel like it's a good source for this topic. They pretty much are talking about like what kind of chemicals are put into processed foods and like how it's better for you to eat a 10-ounce steak, or better for you to stand on the land of the chemicals of where like the food is being processed than to eat a 10-ounce steak, because there's the same amount of chemical in each, and it also talks about just processed foods and like how farmers get subsidies for creating certain crops or like producing certain crops. So in the flour dough of that pizza that you're putting in the oven for your children, there's like wheat, olive oil, flour, multiple things, Well, did you know that your local farmers get subsidies to create crops that produce things like that produce processed foods? And most people don't know what a subsidy are, so I'm just going to explain it to you. So a subsidy is like a voucher that the government gives a farmer, and in turn they are able to, produce crop, and it helps create processed foods because of the item or the crops that the processed foods needs. So crops themselves that are created from these subsidies aren't bad. It's just what we choose to do with them, like make sugary drinks. We make a lot of high fructose corn syrup, like anything that will stay on the shelf for months at a time. So farmers in the end with these subsidies have low cost and high profit because of these subsidies, and they allow more and faster production of processed foods because of how much crop we have coming in. With that being said, when we create processed foods, there becomes an extended shelf life into it. When scientists created extended shelf life, which is just something that will stay on the shelf for 6 months to years at a time, scientists were thinking about the world and waste, like food waste, more than they were thinking about the consumer. The consumer ends up hurting a lot in this situation because it's making us sick. So who's going to enjoy the earth if we're all too sick from consuming heavily processed foods? Now, we all like overly processed foods because of the overall costs of grocery buying. Box of mac and cheese is like $1 for like 3 packs, and it's cheap for the companies to make these things, and that's why they're able to put them on the shelf so cheap also. However, less fortunate communities with minimum wage jobs are targeted with this more because they're unable to keep, fresh fruits in the freezer and in the fridge because they need something that's going to stay good for a long time. My conclusion is that no one truly thinks about processed foods and how they hurt our bodies. Processed foods are literally engineered for overconsumption. They are low in nutrients and they take less time and energy to digest. The Center of Disease Control, the CDC, has even said themselves that, processed foods are the root cause of nearly every modern disease, like diabetes, high blood pressure, unhealthy relationships with food. So here you go. Picture yourself again. Fast forward 10 years, though, and your son comes to you. He's 14 now. You're still that same single mom, and your 14-year-old comes to you and says he has excessive thirst, blurred vision, shakiness, and constant hunger. So you take him to the doctor. He's diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. The doctor tells you that he has to be on metformin or insulin for the rest of his life. So will you reflect on the last 10 years of frozen pizza and fast food and still see them as a cost-efficient convenience or a costly diagnosis? Thank you, guys, and I appreciate you watching. The purpose of this was just to get your mind rolling about how unhealthy processed foods are and what they can do to your health. Thank you.